that I realized is, you know, the world of real estate is such a big word, right? You could have people that do luxury real estate and people that want to do waterfront real estate. They want to be the local neighborhood expert. But some people are just wired to want to do investments, right? Like that's their thing. That's what they read about. That's what they obsess about. And I never want to fight against that passion. Mike's passion was that, like he's following cryptocurrency. He can tell you all about the stock market. He can tell you about, and so it's like, dude, you need to be on the investment vertical because that vertical is going to fill your cup. And I think it's one of the best verticals out there. And so that's how we're training and really pouring into Mike, right? So thanks for that.
Can you define what you mean when you say vertical?
Sure. So when I say vertical, I also call them zones, or you can call them a niche, right? Like you can't be all things to all people. You have to decide at some point, like who you want to be in the world of real estate, whether you're an agent or whether you're an investor, like who are you going to target? So let's look at the investment side real fast. You might say, I'm going to specialize in divorcees. Well, that's really niche. And by the way, the smaller you go, the bigger your world becomes. Everybody's always worried about like what they're missing out on or what they're losing. But instead, the key always becomes to go deep, right, on something. So you can focus on estate sales, or like Mike, you can focus on absentee owners, right? Because that's another big vertical to go after. But if you're trying to do absentee owners and estate sales and pre-foreclosures, guess what ends up happening? Like you don't end up doing any business because you can't move fast enough and you're not known as an expert in a particular field, right? So we're really big into creating what we call zones. And you could either have a hyper-local zone, like a geographic zone, or you can have a psychographic zone, like, you know, investors. Investors are my psychographic zone, right? Because I felt like a kindred spirit with the investor, because they're small business owners who want to build a better life and future for themselves. And we can get into relationship really fast because that's what I'm passionate about and that's what they're passionate about. So then there's a lot of synergy, right? Sure. So who are you?
I'm just me. Mark Beckett, everybody. Good to meet all of those that I haven't met yet. And hello again to those we have seen before. And hello out there to the internet folks. I run CAZA Construction. I am a buy and hold and rehab real estate investor, always looking for new projects to undertake. If anybody has a project for a real beat up house that might need some work, I'd love to know about it. And I have worked with Rob since meeting him in this room, not this exact room, but a room much like this 12 years ago.
2007, I think.
Like 2007, 2008.
That's when I was doing foreclosure bus tours.
Right, because it was around 2007, I'd worked for builders and developers for a number of years, and then in 2007, 2008, all right, there's no more building and developing to be done, so you had to find some other way to make money if you were going to do anything in real estate. So there were a bunch of nasty, molded up bank-owned houses laying around. So started looking at doing those, and again, met Rob in this room, talking about the kinds of stuff that we're talking about this evening. And hey, you know where to find these old beat up houses? Like, yeah, well, I got a couple of bucks. You know how to renovate? I'm like, yeah, I know how to renovate. You do stuff, right? And if you can meet people who think like you do and who have the same philosophy and approach to doing things the way that you have, you can build a big world, you can build a big life, and you can become financially independent and free and all the other good, fun stuff. While also having a pretty good time. So
while having fun.
We have a pretty good time buying our old beat up houses and hopefully fixing them up, selling them for more than we've got into them, and occasionally keeping one to rent. It works. It works if you work it. Like Rob said, it works best if you project and tell the world what it is you're looking for. I'm looking for roughed up houses, preferably in the Northern Virginia area. Would we do deals other places? Sure. But I would prefer that when you talk to someone that's heard someone that's got a house that's like, oh, I don't know what they're going to do with it because it's in real rough shape and it's over in Herndon and they just got to find a way to get out of it. Please think of me and do yourself a favor, come up with a similar story, a pitch for yourself. And that's what you tell the world, right? That's why we do this, is to give us a platform to meet other people, to tell them our deal, to tell them what we're here to do in business, talk about our business a little bit, and hopefully meet other people, and we have. We get deals from this room. We've got loans from this room. We've made friends in this room. Networking works.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, Mark was that guy in the room that was asking really intelligent questions. And he was always asking me really smart questions. And I was like, okay, this is a great question. Like, and then one day he was like, listen, I know about land development, but I don't know about the sticks and bricks. And I want to learn that business. And that's how it started, right? I was like, okay, let's go look at these foreclosures. And I think I had you process short sales for a little bit, and you were like, what a nightmare.
Yeah.
Right. But that's okay. You were learning that. That's how I tested you.
A different end of the market.
Yeah.
That we will see again. Markets are all cyclical. So I don't talk about that. We usually talk about the market a little bit and what people are seeing.
Yeah. And we'll go into that right now. What I was going to say is Mark. So think of Mark on the CAZA side. He runs the construction investment arm of our business. And I run the retail side of the business, right? So, we sold a little over 150 million in volume last year. We want to continue growing. We want to continue evolving. We want to open up 25 offices in the DC metro area. We believe in picking hyper-local geographic areas to own and dominate, and then helping those leaders be able to take those dollars and buy investments and collaborate on projects. And, it's a path. It's a growth path. So we've had fun. We've been doing this now for 12, 13 years together. And tonight we're going to talk about wholesaling.
Yep.
Right.
And what we're not going to do is give you legal or financial advice, right?
We're not attorneys. We're not accountants.
That's right. We do not have books or tapes for sale in the back of the room. We're just here to talk about what it is that we do, how we approach this segment of the business. Like Rob said, hopefully it's interactive. If you have anything that you've done in any of these, that makes sense. That worked for me. Or this is how it worked for me. Here's what didn't work for me. Here's what I think about what you guys are saying is complete bullshit. Whatever. Jump into the conversation and we'll talk about it, right? But that's kind of how this is going to work. But don't go running out there and doing a bunch of stuff and blaming it on me. We're just talking about what we do. And that goes for you folks out there on the internet as well. So if you have anything you would like to say, feel free to drop it in the chat. So I see you, Ron. Greetings and Happy New Year to you. Same to you, Joe.
Hey, Paul.
Good to see everybody out there. I am going to try to make sure everybody is muted on the line. If you do want to say something, feel free to unmute yourself and start hollering. We can hear you, but also feel free to drop something in the chat. All right. So
we're going to talk a little bit about, let's just jump into wholesaling and start answering like questions. And we've got, Mark always kills me or he gets mad at me because there's an agenda.
Yeah, I don't care you.
There's slides, but I always like to just talk off the cuff because I feel like
let's see how close you follow my slides.
Okay,
what do you think wholesaling is, Rob?
Okay, well, yeah, let's talk about the market.
Is this a market for wholesaling right now? Can you do it right now?
It's great.
Anybody doing wholesaling right now?
Lots.
Anybody seen any wholesales?
Lori and Cole just bought 2 properties, from wholesalers.
Right. Tons of wholesaling going on.
Lots. This is probably one of the best time for wholesalers. Why? Because people are so bullish and they're pushing price.
Very little inventory. All of those REOs and short sales are gone, right? You can't just go onto Zillow and find a bunch of cheap houses all over the place that banks are trying to get rid of. You have to be really creative to find inventory.
Yeah, which a wholesaler is a marketer. That's what they are. They're really good at marketing. They're really good at marketing to a specific niche. They're really good at being able to get that niche to raise their hand to then say, yeah, I'm interested in selling my property as is for cash. I don't want people coming through my house. I don't want to list it with a traditional realtor. Why? Because there's typically problems associated with the house, or there could be problems just associated with the people. And the wholesaler's job is to solve the problem for the people. Right? Wholesalers are solution oriented. They're solution oriented. Now, well, I'll get off I'm going to go on a rant on that a little bit.
A wholesaler is a person who is able to identify a motivated seller who has a problem with a piece of real estate, and they try to solve their problem with a real estate transaction.
Mark, you can come in a little bit closer.
The active whole is really.
So these people can see you, right? And you're not going to block the screen. You're good.
This is
kind of see.
This is close enough, Corona boy.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
We're all vaxxed and boosted, by the way.
Yeah. Okay.
Still don't like hugging up on people.
Okay.
So a wholesaler is a person who finds a deal. Wholesaling is the act of taking that contract, an actual physical contract that you have to buy a property, and selling your rights under that contract to someone else. It's how you transfer your rights as the person who was gonna buy it to someone else who will actually buy it. And when I say was gonna buy it, most wholesales are probably not from people who actually do ever intend to purchase and renovate or do anything with the property. You can if you want, don't have to. You can have done the deal. You can intend to do the deal and want to wholesale it. As long as you maintain the right to transfer your rights to someone else, you can wholesale your contract, right?
So the front end of the sale is essentially a classic, you got a seller, you got a buyer.
Yep.
Says, hey, we agree, here's the price, all's good. But then sometime before closing, they sell that option to buy
That's right.
to somebody else.
Yep.
They sell the option to buy.
And
if you don't find somebody to buy that, then you purchase it.
Yeah, you could purchase it, or you have the ability, depending on how you've written the contract. Like, I'll always buy it. If I put my name on it saying that I'm going to buy this property, I'm always going to buy it. But there's lots of wholesalers that never intend to buy it. And if they can't find a buyer, then they put a clause typically in their contract that says, hey, sorry, I can't now close for a particular reason, right? And it gives the wholesaler the out, and it comes down to how the contract is written. But I believe in living up to my word.
Yeah.
I would hate to tell somebody I was going to do something and not perform, right? But let me tell you, there's plenty of wholesalers that will not perform, right?
So to that point, you know, I guess the question that comes to mind is why would a seller sell to a buyer, you know, who we now know as a wholesaler,
Sure.
with that clause in the contract? Does that go back to the fact that their place is in a certain condition, they don't want people to walk, so for them it's a trade-off? This is the
one word that describes all of how this business functions: motivation. Your seller is motivated by something. You want to know the top 3 things that motivate a seller? Keep coming. We talk about that. That is one of the foundational aspects of any business, is trying to find someone who is motivated to sell you the thing you want to buy. Our widget just happens to be real estate, but it's all transactions, right?
Sure.
The way you get a deal from anything is to find someone who's motivated to sell you the thing.
There's got to be a problem typically there, right? So most of these properties are ones that, Sam, you may never have walked in a property like this before. When I first started, I was like, how is somebody going to sell? Why would they sell it at 70 cents on the dollar minus the reno, then minus the wholesale fee? Like, you start talking about like a really low number. What's because the house typically has either structural problems, could have mold, there could be financial distress, that there's emotional. And so there's so many reasons why somebody is just like, just solve this problem for me, right?
But the short answer is, when a person has those issues and they have that motivation, the topic of, oh, you have the right to assign your rights to someone else, just doesn't come up. The short answer is, it's not a problem because it never comes up. That's not the thing that the person who is motivated by one of these circumstances is focused on. They're focused on, oh, you'll buy it next week for cash?
As is, I'm going to get this
As-
number,
Right,
I'm good,
right.
right? And then what happens is you're either the one that's going to show up, or your investor is going to show up.
Right.
But either way, it's going to get done, right? Now, there are some wholesalers that will shop that around and then, you know, find out that it wasn't a good deal, and then they back out and they disappoint somebody, which hurts, right? But then that person more than likely will then find somebody else that will do it, right?
So how do you make money by wholesaling, right? So the example I give, just to use small round numbers, is if the property you have located, or someone has brought you, wherever it's coming from, is worth $100,000, right? Totally fixed up, and it's going to cost you $10,000 to get it into $100,000 condition, right? I would suggest that if you could buy that property for, or put it under contract for, say, $60,000. If I buy it for 60, I put $10,000 into it, I'm doing it for 70. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, that's all the cost. Of course, it's not. let's just say I'm into it for 70 and I can sell it for 100. There's a $30,000 margin profit for me waiting at the end of this, right? So if I've got someone who I know will sell it for 60, anything I can get underneath that 60 is something that I know someone else would be willing to buy it off of me for. So I'd pay 60. I'm assuming anybody else here would pay 60. If I can get my seller to sell it to me for 55, now I've created the $5,000 cushion where I can say, cool, I know anybody's going to want this for 60. I've got it under contract for 55. If I assign my rights to someone else at a price of 60, I make the difference. Make sense?
Yep. Now I have a question for you guys, right? Because you guys just got done doing this. Did you see the assignment fee on the settlement statement?
On the settlement statement, we did.
Yeah, on the settlement, but you didn't know prior to the settlement statement.
How much?
How much did they make on the wholesale fee?
And that one was 30, right?
So the wholesaler made $30,000, right, on,
On each deal.
On each of them.
yeah. So, yeah, I mean, Mark and I paid
I think the highest fee I've ever paid is 100,000.
to a guy in this room, right? Who, by the way, I bought his house last year.
Mhm.
And, you know, he essentially subject-toed his property to me. And I very quickly made, Mikey, you and I were talking about this, $50,000 on, you know, on that deal. But that's the symbiotic relationship that's in here. Like wholesaler just made $30,000 for signing paper, right? Now,
After he made $100,000 for signing some paper a couple of years before that. The point is, the math is whatever you get the opportunity for, less than what someone else is willing to buy it from you for, right?
Yeah.
So if your thing is worth $1 million, you get it for $500,000.
So then by definition, the wholesaler is actually going to raise the price so that he makes more money, though, right?
that's right.
So how do we find a good wholesaler and everybody's trying to price up the price?
Sure. Let's go through a few more slides. We'll talk about maybe where you can find reasonable wholesalers and what a reasonable fee
After a while,
might
can
be.
you trust
right?
the wholesaler if he comes to you with a deal?
Well, here's the thing, you're always verifying the numbers yourself, right? The wholesaler is gonna tell you, hey, this is the ARV, and this is what I want for it. And they will always, you know, they'll always give you numbers that are not accurate. Like, we almost bought a property. I sent you on a wild goose chase
Yeah,
this weekend.
it's harder now than it's ever been to trust your wholesalers numbers, because you're also having to trust the market. We can talk more about the market. But there are some people who honestly, legitimately know what the ARV is. Really, your biggest issue from a deal getting standpoint is not being able to trust your wholesaler. Like Rob said, you need to know these numbers. You need to know how to calculate it for yourself, and then I'll know if this person's reasonable or not. It's just if they happen to know more than two people,
Yeah,
then
Well,
the
there's
price
two-
will be the price.
there's two numbers you need to know. You need to know what is the after repair value.
Or
right? So
ARV. is what we
ARV,
call.
what's the after repair value? And you need to know what things cost, what the construction cost is, right? As a buyer, as a rehabber, those are the things you need to know. And that's where people typically mess up, is that they overinflate because everybody wants to be bullish, especially in today's market. Oh, that property in that neighborhood sold for 550. I think by the time I get done with mine, it's 600,
Right.
right? So everybody always is going to, you know, newer investors going to overinflate the ARV, and they're going to underestimate the cost of renovation. Oh, I think I can do it for 100,000 instead of the 150 it really is, right? So you can start seeing how people try to start making deals work by pushing the value upwards and minimizing the construction cost, right? And that's dangerous. You need to know the numbers. I talked to somebody that was selling a property over the weekend. I sent Mark out there. Listen, it's a full gut job, we're clear, but he said it's 120,000 rent. I'm thinking a full gut to the studs is not 120,000 reno for a 2,000 square foot house. Like, we've done this enough to understand like that's not going to work, right?
Yep.
But I sent them out there anyways, and Mark was like, no, man, this thing is like $200,000. So the numbers didn't work for us, right? And by this time though, I had written a contract, I'd signed the contract, I'd sent the contract over, and I was ready to buy this thing. If the numbers had kind of like, in fact, I was ready to just buy it, like, right, just buy it. And then Brock's like, yeah, we can make it work. And then he was like, dude, this thing is not going to work. This is like a tear down. It wasn't.
Yeah, and who knows, you may have been able to sell the contract on to somebody else. We'll talk about that. And you can wholesale a wholesale, right? As long as you maintain the right to find someone else. But rather than operate on the greater fool theory, I would prefer that everybody understand how to just calculate rough math on a deal, which if you don't do anything else, just determine what it's worth, really, truly worth, renovated. And by the way, we talk about that. We have a whole other discussions about how to properly determine that after repair value. But once you've got it.
I was gonna say, I did promise everybody that's in this room, I'll send you guys a spreadsheet that we use to analyze the deals, right? It's a spreadsheet that Mark put together after years and years of like understanding what the price per square foot was. It's our gift to you for coming and braving in the cold and, you know, and being in the room, right? So it's valuable.
And it's just a more complicated way of doing this, which is determine what it's worth after you fix it up, determine what it's going to cost you to fix it up, right? In my example, if it's $100,000 fixed up and it's cost me $10,000 to fix it up, the general rule is take that fixed up number times 0.7 or 70%, start there, subtract the cost of renovation from that, and that's what you should be purchasing the property for. So what's that 30% represent? The margin. That's every piece of profit plus holding costs and purchase costs and sale costs and all of that. So start with your finished price, take 70% of that, subtract whatever's going to cost you to fix it up, and then whatever comes out at the end, that's what any reasonable rehab investor ought to be willing to pay for that property, right? Easier said than done. It doesn't really work really well for really cheap stuff. So I'm not suggesting that's the number you should use if you're looking at buying some bungalow in like the low country of South Carolina where the thing's worth $50,000 fixed up. Good on you if you can get these numbers to work on a $1 million+ house. If I can buy a $1 million house for $700,000 minus the renovation cost, great. That's a $300,000 profit you've got with some costs to buy it and sell it. That happens occasionally, but it's good for the middle market.
It's the middle market. That formula is good for the middle market. You can bump up, you know, the to like point, you know, or 80%.
There are plenty of people who will buy at 80% of ARV minus cost. There will be people out there who will buy at 90% of ARV.
There's a lot, and there's a lot of what we call just dumb money, right? That you're like, how are they making? Okay, so here's case in point, Zillow. For the longest time, I was like, how are they doing it? And eventually I was just like, you know what? They're not in the making money business. They're taking market share.
Talking about their iBuyer
program, right?
Or they'll just say, we'll make you an offer. We will make you an offer.
And we're sitting back going, how are they buying these properties for these numbers? The numbers just don't make sense, especially at scale. Because when you start adding scale, the level of complexity with scale, everything takes longer, everything's harder, right? And
how long was that in existence for, that program?
Year and a half, maybe 2 years. And ultimately, they were trying to make money, and they shut the whole program down because they just didn't understand this, right? They thought that the algorithm could tell them what it was worth, and that algorithm was off most of the time, right? And you can't mess around with 5% margin crushes you. You get that wrong. 10%?
Well, at some point, you probably want a lot of numbers in that too, right? Right? If you do enough of these deals, it's gonna probably.
It's a massive loss.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
I think what happened was they lost $70,000 per deal on average. That's what it worked out to, like a ridiculous sum of money.
Is that dumb money?
Well, that was dumb money, right? Yeah, because it wasn't their money.
And when we're not a part of that organization, so I have no idea what actually happened or went down. All speculation. But all we know is the program stopped.
Besides trial and error.
Yeah. So a couple of ways.
March, we have the how to estimate renovations.
March or April. Yeah. For a shortcut, come here. Again, a couple of months, we'll spend an entire evening talking about my average cost per square foot to do stuff and what the house looks like and what we do and what the stuff costs that we put into it. and how you can kind of boil that down into a formula that you can hopefully apply roughly when you know a little bit of information about a house. But the ways to do it is either to go and do it, right? And the best education you'll ever get is buying an old beat up house and trying to fix it up. So while I would hope that everybody uses formulas and always makes money, the best education you'll ever get is getting your hands dirty in a deal somewhere. So we do, like Rob said, try to get people hopefully armed with enough information that you feel like you can go out and get in a little trouble and it won't kill you. And most of the time it doesn't kill you around here.
Here's a pro tip for you, right? It would be to get a contractor. Now it's hard. We all know finding contractors right now, really hard to even just get them to respond to you, right? But to find somebody that understands renovation cost and then have them just walk you through, pay them for their time, right? Whatever that is, a couple $100, $300, and be like, can you walk me through and just give me an idea of what it would cost to renovate this house? And I'm telling you that hour and a half that you spent, the $300, that will save you tens of thousands of dollars, just that education, right?
That's a real good idea.
Yeah, that's what I would do. Yeah, you can pay more, $300, and he'll walk you through. No, but I mean, that's what I did.
Within a 1 hour's drive of Reston, Virginia
Yeah,
for $300.
no, that's what I did. I essentially got my contractor, Quinn, who's on here. I think he was on here before.
I think
Was
he
Quinn
was.
on here?
Yeah, I think he was.
Right? I think we did, I mean, tons of renovations with Quinn, right? Before Mark became a Class A contractor. And Quinn, I'd walk through and I'd say, how much, right? And he'd give me a number. And little by little, I just started learning, okay, the kitchen's gonna be 20, the bathroom's gonna be 5. And like, we started coming up with these values. Now, obviously, square footage factors into that, which is where he got really analytical, developed a spreadsheet, and over hundreds of transactions, he knows exactly what it costs to renovate a rental property, because that's a different cost, versus what we would call like a minor remodel or basic remodel, versus a major remodel, versus a full gut job. Like the price per square foot is different on all of those. And he just built it into the spreadsheet. And all you got to do is say, okay, is this a major or basic remodel, or is it a major remodel, or is it a full gut job? And you just kind of put in the number, and then it gives you like, hey, it should, based on the square footage, based on the renovation type, this is what it should cost you, right? And it'll give you a WAG.
Is that the spreadsheet?
That's a
you're
spreadsheet.
getting?
Yeah, yeah.
You're getting? Oh my God.
Yeah,
what-
yeah,
what
it's a
great
gift.
Christmas gift.
Yeah, it's a gift. It's a gift.
And those numbers are
And
twice what
Mark didn't know I was going to give that away.
2x
Like,
what they
son of a, why are you giving that away?
I think we do charge for it.
Yeah, we should.
So you do have to have some basis for understanding what those numbers are, though, right? What it's going to be worth, what it's going to cost to get there, and if you can factor in any other costs for like holding and that kind of stuff, great. But if nothing else, 0.7 times ARV minus repair cost is where most buyers in major metropolitan areas would be willing to buy from you as the wholesaler, right? If you can get it for 70 or around here, even 70, because I'm paying more than 70 cents on the dollar to wholesalers and stuff. So you can get it for 70, you can at least sell it for 75, probably to me if it's in Northern Virginia, right? We'll talk for a second about other places. So
Is it legal?
Yeah.
Right? Is it legal? That's one of the things that we get. It's legal, right? There are some, I think there's some states that they might be coming down a little bit. But let me tell you, there's something else that you need to be focused, like think about. And this is purely my opinion, is that there's a right way to wholesale. There's an ethical way to wholesale, in my opinion, and there's a way that is not so ethical to wholesale, right? And it's this, like, after a couple years of doing this, I was like, part of this arbitrage is created because the seller doesn't understand what the ARV is. They don't understand the renovation cost. And so I started feeling like, okay, I'm super knowledgeable about this and they're not knowledgeable. And that's how I create the arbitrage, right? And sure, a hardcore investor is going to be like, that's the world of investing, right? But I started implementing what I would call ethical wholesaling, right? Meaning I would just, full disclosure, I'd just be like, hey, you can sell this on the open market for more money, potentially, right? And we would give them options. We give them options. And then we'd say, you decide, like, which one of these things you want to do. So I started acting as a true fiduciary and consultant. I started feeling a lot better about myself and about the whole process. And people would be like, you know what? No, I just want you to take care of it. Just solve the problem for me. And we're like, okay, cool. Did we lose some deals along the way? Yeah. But then
But we also got listings.
we got way more listings.
We also renovate houses for our clients, make money from that.
Yeah.
So we have other ways to monetize.
We just had other ways to monetize, because what happened was if the wholesale didn't work, we might say, you know what, this is what the as-is purchase price would be. But, you know, if we do a couple little things to it, we could put it on the open market. Even though you're paying a commission, you'll net more money at the end of the day. But it's going to take a little bit longer. And they're like, well, some people would say, sure. But other people would be like, no, I just want this done now, in the next 7 days.
Which again speaks to motivation, right? When you
Motivation.
can tell somebody, by the way, you could make more money without a ton more effort, with a little more effort and time, and maybe not even a lot of risk, you could make more money. No, if you can take care of this in the next week, just do it.
I mean,
It still happens.
I've had people say to me, like, what are you going to do with the house? And I say, oh, we're going to fix it up. It's going to look really nice. You can come back and look at it. And they're like, you should just burn it. Right? Think about that. Like that, because there's so much emotional negativity around the house that they're like, they just don't want to have anything to do with it. It could be a divorce, because of a divorce that happened. It could be just because there was emotional distress.
But that's what gets people into trouble, right? If you look at it purely as an investment, right? That's what gets people into trouble, is that they've got their emotions tied around it. And so they're saying, hey, I'll burn the house down, right? When the reality is, if you take the emotion out of it, it's worth a whole lot more.
Yeah, what you're saying, that's what gets that's why they sell it for less,
Yeah.
essentially, right? To them, they just want somebody to solve the problem, right?
It's like you were talking about 2008, right? In 2008, everything was down. Stock market was down, real estate market was down, and a lot of people panicked and they were emotional and they bailed.
And they bailed.
And
They
look what
just
happened
held
to us.
on.
Exactly.
Yeah, they just held on, which I'm sure in your business, it's always just kind of educating people.
Yeah, I
Look,
mean, to your point, look at the market, the stock market's done since 2008.
Yeah.
Right? It's just interesting. It's like
Yeah.
similar.
look at the housing market since
Yeah,
2008.
It's easy to sit here and today and look back though, isn't it? Like when everyone's losing
Well,
their
yeah,
ass.
because you don't have the emotion around it, right? It's
Right, but
in the
when
heart of
everyone's
it,
losing
you're
their ass
emotional.
and their life savings and their kids' college
Oh,
funds
yeah.
going down the drain, you want to get out.
Yeah.
And,
Well-
you know, I think there's something to the emotional point that it's that it is credible. I
But
think,
but
to-
but what's interesting, if you study history, then you would know, right? Now, I'm not saying you, and just if any of us just study history, we would know, hey, markets they always come back, right? And so while it seems scary, you just got to wait it out.
And if you study
can't-
psychology, you'll realize that history matters to people in a certain psychological state, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Some people are just
So-
like, I just want out.
So
thinking fast and slow.
that's-
Well, my wife and I sold a property management business a decade ago, and we were motivated sellers. It consumed every single waking moment of her time. It caused us financial distress, emotional distress. And I literally sold our Maryland property management accounts for $1, right? $1. Think about it. I gave them the computers. I just wanted out of that business, right? We sold the Virginia assets, I think, for like 40,000 or 50,000 to Ashley Lay. And I regret it. Now I look back and I'm like, we should have held that. We should have figured out a different way to do it. But at the time, I was motivated, right?
So come back in February, we'll talk about motivation and what motivates sellers and the psychology of that. To get back onto this topic,
Oh yeah, it took us off.
whether it's ethical or not will be up to you to determine how to ethically approach the business and the people that you're talking to. The legality of it, not an attorney, is that if you have contract rights are always in almost every jurisdiction of this country assignable so long as your contract says that they are. If you use, for example, your average basic off the whatever realtor contract in most jurisdictions that have realtors that have a contract, they're typically not assignable without the express written permission of both buyer and seller, right? That's in their contract because it's in their contract. It doesn't have to be. It certainly doesn't have to be in Virginia. The contract needs just a very few basic things to come to an agreement between a buyer and a seller. Assignability is not one of those things. So if it's silent as to whether it's assignable or not, Most people would say that means that it is. You can make it clear if you want and have your contract say this contract is assignable.
You can
And
put
that's
that in a
it.
Virginia contract, or it is
It's like a
assignable.
standard G-car contract.
Yeah, you could just
Is
add
by
it.
default assignable?
Is
or
not,
You
It's
need to
not.
write, you need to
is
write that.
not.
You need to
Correct.
write it in.
You need to either remove the clause that says you can't assign this contract without the express signed permission of the seller, and or write a new one in that says this contract is assignable. Some people just write in the top that, it's my name or my LLC's name, whatever my entity is, I want to buy this, and or assigns.
And or assigns.
That's pretty good, but if there is a clause somewhere later down in the thing that says it's not assignable, then you need to deal with that. So that's why we don't typically use the base agent contract with the seller, especially if you intend to wholesale it. There's like 13 out of the
And
14
you know, the
pages of
G-car
garbage that you don't
contract
read.
is how many pages?
G-
17.
Yeah.
Or
A full
the one-
with-
The one in DC is 17.
Without addenda, right? And there are addenda that can go on to that.
Yeah, and
So-
so we have like a 2-page contract, make it really simple, right?
I think it's interesting that, what you're saying as a real estate agent, I love the approach of just full disclosure, because it can ruin your reputation as a real estate agent
Oh,
if you're trying to buy a great deal and then you flip it and they find out about it. And we live in a small community, so, we're, not that you would want to do that anyway, but it's easy to be taken the wrong way, or your intention used to be something other than what you wanted them to be, to be taken as different. So I love that approach. But we also have a wholesaler kind of in the Winchester area who sends out letters
Mhm.
to people whose houses may have been on the market for an unusually long time for the market. And we know this person to be a great person. We bought these 2 houses from him, and he's great to work with as far as we're concerned. But I know in the area, I've heard other people kind of speak negatively or roll their eyes, when his name comes up, and it's not fair to him. But I think that it's because they don't understand completely what he's doing.
There is
So-
definitely a negative connotation around we buy houses companies.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there just is, right?
Mhm.
And it's something that they've battled with that imaging. Like when I was first trying to decide who I wanted to be in the world of real estate, like I was asking myself those questions. Am I going to be the investor, we buy houses person, or is there a different role that I could play?
Easy to be seen as like the bottom feeder.
That's right. It could be easy to be seen that way, even though you're offering a legitimate, helpful service. It can,
There's a reason they're called bandit signs, right? Like we had some at one point, like the number and like calls to buy the house for cash. I literally felt like a criminal, like pulling over on the side of the road, like dodging traffic, like running out and sticking the thing in the middle of the street. And in some jurisdictions, you are a criminal, by the way, for putting your sign up in the right of way. But you'll see like nailed to the top of a telephone poles. There are plenty of different ways to get the phone to ring, and we'll talk about that at another meeting.
I think it's next month.
But yeah, you'll have to kind of figure out for yourself, as we said, what you believe to be the ethical way to do it. But from a legal standpoint, if you have rights, your rights are almost always assignable as long as they're not expressly not assignable in your document. And if you want to be clear, you say that they expressly are. And that's what it is.
What's so interesting was the longer I did this, I realized that there was no difference between a wholesaler and a listing agent. They're both controlling real estate with a contract. One's a listing agreement, one's a purchase contract.
Yeah.
There's no difference. You're just sometimes,
Yeah.
not wholesalers don't, always make that. The average wholesale fee might be like $15,000, I think, in this area, but they can. I mean, they can absolutely make a lot more money. Right.
Mark, can I ask you a question about the signability? Let's say you have a standard G-card contract and you write that clause in that it's assignable.
Mhm.
In that case, going back to a conversation we had earlier tonight, if that wholesaler then is not able to resell that contract on the secondary market, are they responsible to carry through with the purchase of that deal?
So
So the
I
question
would,
was, just in case they didn't hear,
yeah,
if the
G-car
wholesale-
contract is a DC area contract, right?
yeah, and the wholesaler isn't able to perform, right? Are they
Mhm.
responsible?
So it depends on what else is in that contract. Typically, in most of your realtor contracts in any area, there's a deposit. There's a definition of when that deposit is at risk. There are definitions for what buyer and seller default are. And typically, that's the whole reason you have a deposit or earnest money deposit or escrow or whatever they call it. The purpose is you're putting something at risk as the buyer so that if you change your mind or you can't close or something happens and you do default under the contract, minimally you lose that whatever, that escrow, that earnest money, that deposit, whatever you're calling it. So if that's the nature of the contract you've signed, then I would say, yes, you're at risk of losing something. And then again, not to discuss legal stuff, but if you have a contract between two people that is legal and valid, there's always the rights of people to pursue court action to say, to enforce this contract, enforce you to live by the terms of this contract, regardless of what the deposit and default and things are. So the answer is, the short answer is, it depends. And it depends entirely on what's written in that
Spoken
contract.
like a good lawyer. It
But-
depends,
But
but he's not a lawyer.
But the key takeaway is you really shouldn't ever be using any realtor's contract to do
Yeah.
standard real estate investing, much less wholesale, because you don't need to. There's, out of those 17 pages, like 14 of them are not needed to have a legally binding valid contract. There are plenty of good reasons to have a lot of those clauses that are in there. They're there for clarity and to help the buyer and seller understand what their rights are and their responsibilities, but they don't need to be there. So that again is where you will have to try to decide for yourself what you feel needs to be there in order to do what you're there to do as an investor or a wholesaler, which is get the property under contract, identify somebody else that wants to buy those contract rights from you, and then sell those rights to that other person, right?
What's great about wholesaling is that it allows somebody to be able to get into the business without really any of their own money, when you think about it, right? Because you can control a contract for $100. You literally could put like a $100 EMD, which we've done.
And that's a really important distinction to make between that and any other contract that you're going to get from any agent using their standard agent contract. What is in it? The basic stuff and whatever you negotiate. And it is legal to put a property under contract with a $100 deposit, a $1 deposit, good faith in many places, and a handshake, as long as it's written, constitutes a legally binding agreement between two people. You do not, in most cases, have to put down 1%, 2%, 5%, 10% of earnest money. You might need to get your deal if that's what you negotiate with your seller.
Maybe the seller says, listen, 100's not enough. I need $1,000 or $10,000, but it's all negotiable. Everything's negotiable.
And
How
so that's,
realistic is that in this market with such little inventory and buyers clamoring over every deal that
the
seems to come
highest
up?
deposit I think I've ever put on anything is $5,000.
Oh, super good.
So what you not good, what you need to do to kind of understand this aspect of the business is remove yourself from anything you think you know about how buyers and sellers communicate and negotiate
It's
and
like
come
the
together.
red pill and blue pill from the Matrix. Remove yourself from all reality. What you
Right.
move, right? What you think you know.
It's
different.
it's different. The reality for a motivated seller, and that's the only person who's going to sell you a property at X cents under market value. Under market value is the basic premise here. They could sell it for more. They could call Rob and he could throw the thing on the MLS right now, and every house we've ever bought could have been sold for more. But the person who was selling it was motivated. And it's a whole nother night for a whole nother discussion about where that motivation comes from and the words you're looking to hear and the words you want to use to discuss it and that kind of thing. But all of these contract points are all negotiable, and by and large, if you're going to do this for this purpose, for wholesaling, you want your contract to be as clear and as easy to understand and potentially as easy to undo if necessary as possible. So just know that that is possible when you have a properly written document.
Did you put together your contract with a lawyer, or was there a template used? If you're not using the standard Virginia contract, then how did you?
Right.
We
So-
are indeed it. We are indeed it. Ripped off and duplicated it
Okay.
from another investor, right?
So we'll show you a contract that we use and with the disclaimer that don't use it because it's probably not good, along with anything else that you'll find out on the internet. Do they get used? Absolutely. Does it work? Does you go to closing and title company's okay with it? Absolutely. Just know that there's not a whole lot there, but we'll share with you the one that we use.
And you actually need
It works.
you need two contracts, right? We'll probably get into this in the slides, but you're gonna need the purchase contract, and then you're gonna need the assignable, right? Where, you know, we're essentially saying you're agreeing to the rights of the contract that they got into,
Yep.
right? So the assignable clause.
Real quick though, we're talking about things that you need a real estate license, and actually somebody checked in, said they thought that they did. I think it was, somebody from Philly that said that they thought that they did, need a license. Our understanding is that you do not, need a real estate license. In fact,
In
I'm pretty
Virginia,
confident
Maryland,
that's,
and DC, you do not. Now, any other states, I don't know.
I don't know either, but I doubt it. Because again, realty and brokerage is the act of representing someone else to introduce them to a buyer.
As a fiduciary.
As a fiduciary, you have a responsibility to another person to help them find someone else. As a wholesaler, my responsibility is not to find someone else. That just happens to be what I'm doing. We have an agreement, a written contract with a seller that says, I will sell you my property on X date for X amount of money with a few other terms. With that and nothing else, you have created a legal, it's called a bundle of rights. If you take the realtor class, right, that's what a contract is, a bundle of rights. One of those rights that you get in the bundle, in that paperwork with that agreement between a buyer and seller, is the right to assign my rights to someone else, unless it's prohibited by the contract, which again, we already said, you got to strike that out, or make it clear that you are going to keep that right to assign to someone else. That has nothing to do with you being licensed or not. There may be some restrictions if you are licensed. Again, that varies by state, right?
If you're a licensed agent, then you have to disclose that you're a licensed agent. So I would, when I was doing this at scale, I would just tell people, hey, I'm buying for my family's portfolio. I have a license, but I'm buying this property as part of my family's portfolio. And they'd be like, okay, like nobody cared. Nobody cared. Like the number one question that people getting into the business in the beginning would always ask me is, should I get my real estate license? I hear that there's a conflict of interest. And I'm like, there's no conflict of interest. Unless you're doing something massively illegal, which you shouldn't be doing anyways, there's no conflict.
And the reason it doesn't, to my mind, require a real estate license is because what we're talking about here is contract law. And just so happens that real estate is the widget, but a contract in most every state in the union is an agreement between two parties, and most all of those kinds of agreements involve a bundle of rights, one of which is almost always the right to give your rights, sell your rights, assign your rights to someone else for a car, a cow, an office building, a house, a condo, or whatever. We've agreed over here to do this thing. I have the right as one of the parties to this agreement to say to someone else, hey, you act as me under this agreement and you go to complete the contract and buy or sell the thing, right? Doesn't matter what you're buying or selling.
Now let me interject real fast, because you're not going to be able to wholesale a property that's on the MLS already, right? So if there's a property that is already on the MLS, the agent on the other side, like as soon as they start seeing like, hey, what is this contract that's assignable? Like, actually, that's not true. I actually did one that was on the MLS that we did, but your end buyer has to buy it cash.
Correct. I feel like you're saying that because it's not going to be easy, right?
That's
If
right.
another agent is involved, they're looking to use the contract that says it's not assignable. They're looking for a traditional type of situation. They want to protect their seller. They have to protect their seller. They have a responsibility to protect their seller. So they're looking for things like an LLC, wanting to assign to. This sounds hinky to me. I don't like it. Great, that's their job. That's what they're there for. So while it is possible, it is going to be very rare.
No,
But
it is.
you're saying that end buyer would have to buy with cash because the lender wouldn't approve
Correct.
an assignable contract like
That's
that?
right. That's right.
There are other factors at play when you're doing it the traditional old-fashioned way with agents and agents contracts that will make it harder to do. It can be done. It just makes it harder. It
No,
doesn't
yeah,
change the-
I correct myself. I was like, no, wait a second. We've done that. It is difficult to do.
It's more
You're a
difficult.
bad agent if you want to buy it, it's on MLS, then the agent's probably not the best agent.
That's the thing.
They're not
If
pricing it right.
Yeah.
If it's on the MLS.
That's right. We don't typically right now find a lot of wholesale deals on the MLS because there are other people looking at it. A good agent's going to do what a good agent should do and try to bring the most people to see the thing and bid the price up. It's just typically not where we would make money. So where do you find, though, buyers for this contract after you've got it? Because people are worried, well, all right, so I've put the thing under contract. Now I've got to find somebody else to pay more than I was going to pay for it to step into my shoes and go to closing and buy this thing.
And a new investor's terrified about that. But if I put it under contract and I can't resell this contract, and now I'm either obligated, I'm on the hook, or I'm going to break my word, right? Well, if it's a deal, let me tell you, everybody in this room would buy it tomorrow, right? Anybody, you can literally make a post on Facebook and it will be gone tomorrow, right? And by the way, if it's not gone tomorrow, guess what you've learned?
You did not have a deal.
It's not a deal,
You did
right?
not have a deal.
If it's
That's
not,
right.
yeah. But if you just put it out anywhere, so don't even worry, because people would always be like, I need to go get a buyer's list. I'm like, today, the internet is your buyer's list, right? All these closed Facebook groups, our grid group, you could post it in a grid investor group community, put it there, it's gone in 15 minutes.
I have a freshly Lysoled stack of cards up at the front if you would like to take a card. If you've got something you think is remotely close to a deal, please send it over. I'd be happy to look at it. But as Rob said, if you want more than one person to look at your deal, just join our Facebook group and say, I've got a deal. Facebook, Grid Investor under groups, right? Make sure it's not the main page, that it's actually a group.
Yep.
The Grid Investor Community Group, you have to ask to be let in because we need the right to kick you out if you get spammy and stupid, which we'll do, but we kick people out so we don't, right? It's a really good community full of hundreds of people who are doing what we do, and occasionally people put deals on, right? And people look for contracts, people get money, people do all kinds of good stuff on it. So join it, it's free. You'll find buyers there. Other than that, send out a couple of emails. Everyone's probably got a dozen people that they know. They can send an email out. They may not even be investors. Just say, I have a house that's cheap. You'll find somebody.
And the real key is that one of the reasons why we do this is for people to get to meet other people, put them in their database, and eventually, like a really good wholesaler will only have like 4 or 5 relationships they ever need to go to, right? They'll have their go-to person. Like this wholesaler will probably be like, hey, Lorraine Cole perform, so they're going to get my first call. And if they're not interested, I might go to somebody else, right? And they'll give you what they're, hey, this is the deal, take it or leave it. Because the person that controls the real estate actually dictates everything. You think that it's the person that has the money. It's not the person that has the money. It's the person that controls the real estate, dictates everything.
So talk about dictating terms. I have a property under contract and found you to buy it from me as a wholesale, right? So I'm going to wholesale my rights to you so that you can buy it. Am I allowed to get a deposit from you?
Say that again?
If I'm wholesaling you my deal and you want to buy it and close on the house that I found, can I get a deposit from you?
100%.
And how much should that deposit be?
As big as I could possibly get it.
Exactly, right? So we go to our motivated seller. Hey, I'm going to buy this house. I'll buy it from you in a couple of weeks. It might not be me that shows up at closing, by the way, but it doesn't matter. Everybody's money is green. You're going to be happy. Your job is going to be done. Your life will be happy. I will give you $1, $100, $5,000, whatever it is, the smallest amount you think that they'll take as a deposit to hold your interest on this contract. You go to your wholesale buyer. Hey, here's what I'm looking to sell this deal for. Are you interested? And I'm going to collect, hopefully, at least what you have on your deposit with your seller,
Minimum.
plus maybe a couple of factors, right? Because that way, if my end person doesn't perform, you have the right to keep their deposit so that if you can't perform with your end seller and you can't work anything out, and by the way, motivated sellers typically will occasionally give you more time if you need it, if something happened last day. Oh, there were issues. I'm sorry. It's a business. Stuff happens. Please, if you wouldn't mind, extending. Need another week. Need a couple of weeks. You can work it out. But if you can't, and they say, no, I'm taking your deposit. As long as you've collected a deposit from the person who is going to buy it from you, that was at least as much or more as you owed them. Now it still doesn't cost you any money, right? But how do I make sure that that deposit that I get from you as my end buyer is there and is
I'm going to
good?
make sure you wire it to my title company.
Wow, you can do that?
You can do that.
Isn't that what title companies do? They take money and they sit on it for you, and you can actually have your wholesale buyer send their money into escrow with the title company that you choose, right? Because like you just said, you have the deal. And if you have the deal, you can dictate all of the terms.
I can dictate the title company that's going to be used. I can dictate how much money they need to put in as an EMD, and typically it's a pretty hefty amount because I want to see if they're for real. If they're hesitant, remember, like there's so many people that will line up behind them that are ready and willing and able to do it like really fast. Professionals that have done this 100 times, they're never going to default on you, right? They're literally like, they're hungry. They want the deal. A inexperienced person, you're going to feel it. You're going to hear it on the other line. They're going to try to do it for the least amount. I'm like, no, I don't need to do that, right? I can collect a nice big deposit and send it to my title company and here are the wiring instructions, right?
So in your contract with a seller, you would like the smallest deposit that you can have. Even better, the right to cancel the contract for some reason, any reason, no reason. Again, motivated sellers will allow you to say, I have the right to inspect the property prior to closing and I can cancel the contract for any reason prior to closing if I need to. Would a non-motivated seller allow that? Probably not, but a motivated seller, sure. I'm only going to waste your time, folks, for the maximum of 2 weeks. Give me a couple of weeks to get the money sent over to the bank where I need it, to get the title work together. You probably know that the title people need to like research your name and your grandfather and anybody else who's owned this property for the last couple hundred years. That takes a couple of days. They'll do all that stuff, and then we'll go to closing and you get your money. Whatever the reason is, you maintain the right to say, actually, I don't like something that I see as part of this thing. I'm sorry, gotta go, gonna cancel the contract. If you can't do that though, small a deposit as possible, whatever that deposit is, collect at least that much or more from the person that you wholesale it to, so that you are protected multiple ways if things go sideways and you can't close and your seller won't give you more time and they demand to keep whatever deposit you got. It hopefully should be your money. It should be the money of the buyer.
Want to know what a bad wholesaler does? A bad wholesaler will sell you their contract word, and they have an idea of what that first mortgage payoff is, right? And then maybe they got the statement from the seller and they calculated all the numbers and they did that. And then you get the settlement, or as the title company starts processing everything, they're like, hey, there's an IRS lien on here for $100,000. So the wholesaler, the mistake that they made was that they, an inexperienced wholesaler, didn't do a title bring down, didn't go to the title company and get all the title work prepared in advance. Ask me how I know that. I've had that happen, right? Where I was like, hey, they can't, we can't release this lien because this property is tied to 3 other properties in a blanket mortgage. So you can't like pick this one out. I was like, okay, well we've now just wasted, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and I can't even buy this property. And now I gave them a deposit and I got to try to get that deposit back, right? So
So when you're a buyer from a wholesaler, you want to be posting that deposit with the title company. Don't hand over stacks of cash to your wholesale seller so that you have to chase them down for it. That's what the title company is there for. If they determine that the title isn't clear and the property can't be sold, their job is to say, sorry, no one can do this. Everybody have your documents and dollars back. So yeah, real good point that you don't just fork over money in envelopes to people, send it to title companies because that's their job. Speaking of title companies, how do you get paid on your wholesale deal? Most of the time, it's on the HUD. It's a fee. And so people say, well, what is somebody going to say? The seller gets to see that. What are they going to say when they see
the the $30,000, right?
Right, and I have a question about that though, because on our last transaction that we just did, there was a question from the seller. The seller sold it for $360 to the wholesaler. The wholesaler was making $30, so technically they were selling it for $390, the $30,000 to the wholesaler. But the seller didn't want to pay the tax on that $30,000. He wanted the sale price of $360. So we remember having to work through that.
but they don't pay tax because it's part of their cost, right? But they might say, I'm paying more in, what is it, like transfer taxes, but it's pennies,
And
right?
well, and you wouldn't if it was structured properly, because the seller is still getting 360. They should only be paying taxes on 360. On the seller side of the HUD, under sales price, it's 360. On the buyer side of the HUD is where the 30 is. You as the buyer were actually paying the 30, and it was on your side. So it shouldn't have been on the seller side. So that you will potentially have a seller say, well, who's this something LLC and this $30,000 assignment fee? The
See, it's my
easiest
part.
way, to deal with it is when you're signing your document, your contract with the seller. The seller, as you may know, it takes a village to get houses renovated. I've got partners. I'm probably going to have to bring some partners in. You'll probably see other names on the HUD when we get there. They're going to buy an interest in with me. They're going to go in with me. None of that
That's
has
my
anything to
project
do
manager,
with you.
yeah.
It won't affect your side of the paperwork at all, and it shouldn't, but if it's done properly. Won't affect your side of the paperwork at all. Just know that if there's a couple other names under there, they've all got the same green cash. We laugh about it, we joke about it, and then that's it. And then when they see it on the thing, oh yeah, he did say something about a partner or something's going to be in. Or if it comes up at the last second, yes, I have sold an interest in this deal to a partner. That would be the only thing you've ever had. I've never had anyone say, oh, that's it, I'm not going to sell it, because I can see motivated seller, the thing on the right-hand side matches what you had on the contract, matches the thing that solved their problem when you were solving their problem for their house, their office building, their whatever it was they were selling. The thing that's going on the left-hand side of the page is rarely an issue. It doesn't even come up for your seller.
Sometimes one of the things you do have to do is that sellers don't always understand all of the closing costs associated, right?
Yeah.
So as a wholesaler, you can say that you'll take on all of the closing costs that are associated with closing the property, right? And that the net number, I'm telling you, you're going to get this number, and this is the number you're going to get. So then when you sell the contract rights, they just know, hey, you're picking up the side of the closing costs. So when you're factoring that in, right? Because you do get to the settlement table and they're like, hey, I thought I was selling for 360, but now I'm paying this title attorney and I'm paying for this, right? And they don't understand transfer taxes. What's this transfer tax that I'm paying, right? They don't know that. And so you can make it really easy and just say, hey, you'll cover all the, you just got to factor it into the deal. Right.
But what you were saying earlier about, full disclosure up front. So you're saying that in a wholesaler situation, you're not really disclosing upfront that you're assigning it to another buyer. How does that conversation go as a real estate agent?
So my conversation's a little bit different, right? I'm going to say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, there's 3 ways that we can actually help you. Like we can buy it all cash, or have one of our investors buy it cash. And this is roughly what the numbers are going to look like, right? And we're all going to value the property the same way. It's, ARV, what it's going to be worth fixed up, minus, 70% minus the reno cost, and it brings to this number, right? And if that's a number that you are fine with and want, like we can make that happen in the next 7 days, as long as clear title is good and all the rest. And that just solves the problem. It's convenience, right? It's fast, it's convenient. We buy it in as-is condition. We take on all the risk that's associated with doing that, right? But I think you could make a little bit more money if we help you polish the penny, get it fixed up a little bit. We'll even front the cash to do this. It might take an additional 30 days past what you want, but I think that you could make an additional 30,000 if we just take another 30 days and maybe put in, 2,000-3,000 to just declutter, right? Or maybe even do just like a basic remodel. But it's going to take a little bit longer, and it's not certain. It could take longer than 30 days. But in this market, low inventory, I suspect it'll go fast, right? If we do it right, or we could do a full renovation. But I always kind of discourage that. That's a major remodel that'll take like 5-6 months, and I'm sure that's not what you want. They're like, oh no, that's not what I want, right? So they either go number 1 or number 2, and sometimes they'll just say, you know what, I don't want anybody coming through the house. And I just want to do it, I just want to I just want it taken care of in the next 7 days. And then Mark would say, well, we partner with some people along the way, and we might bring in 1 or 2 partners to take care of it, but this would be the number that you would receive at the end. And
You're
then
not
like,
going into the details that you're wholesaling it, you're
No.
just giving the general.
yeah, the general. And truthful, when you think about it, they are a partner. Your rehabber is a partner. And you're essentially just making the money on the front end yourself, right? You're the marketing arm. If you think of it yourself, you're the marketing arm for the rehabber. And you guys have gone into partnership together. And
Yeah,
you're just getting your fee up front.
Right, I just explained it, I'm selling an interest in this deal to a partner. I've sold it, that's where that fee came from.
That's what that is. They paid me, and as long as they get what they want, then they're cool.
Yep.
But I just felt better having that. If you can wait 30 days and we could do a little bit of work and put it on the open market, you'll always net more money when you get people competing, right?
So are there other ways to do it? Sure, if someone is willing to trust you as the wholesaler with money, they can say, sure, here's a check, here's some cash, sign your rights over to me to close on this, and I'll just hope that it happens, or I'll have you give it back to me if it doesn't happen. And then it doesn't show up on the closing paperwork as a fee or an amount. It just shows up as one piece of paper that says, this person over here assigned their rights to this person over here, they're stepping in, title company just changed the name. It doesn't have to be on there in any place that I know of. If there are 2 people who trust one another, say, take the fee and just get back to me, when the thing closes.
I'm going to give you guys 2 platforms to look at, right? One is called Sunday.com, like the Sunday that you eat, right? And it's an interesting model. I don't know if Josh is on here or not, but there's another one called Investor Lift, right? And what these are, you're now finding these platforms where wholesalers, people that are controlling real estate, are putting real estate into the platform. And then they're letting investors bid on that, right, online. So Sunday, actually, they control all the inventory themselves. They do marketing like an investor. They paint themselves as like the friendly investor, and that they're going to get investors to compete, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. We're going to get investors to compete for your property, and then they take a fee for it. And they're almost like listing agents, right? And so it's interesting. So Sunday.com is one. They're not in this market, but they're another market. So they're like down in Florida, but they'll maybe come to this market at some point.
What's the second one? Oh, yeah, I mean,
Investor Lift. Investor Lift is the other one. Robert Wesley or something like that. So they also have created a platform that allows the wholesaler to put the deals into the platform. Why do they want that? Because it like the wholesaler makes more money when they expose it to more people. Bottom line, right? And by the way, we're probably going to do something similar with Grid. We'll have some kind of Grid platform where we'll allow people to put their properties into our platform. I just want to structure it in a way that I probably want to structure it more like Sunday does, because it really helps the seller, right? Do it.
All right.
Yeah.
I remember when I was like first looking to wholesaling in real estate and such, I remember seeing like on a forum, or maybe it was just a YouTube video where they were talking about 2 different methods for contracts you could use on this idea. And one sounded, I mean, exactly like within $5 a night, the fee is built into the contract and it's on the settlement papers, and eventually they know that fee is there. But I remember also talking about this other method, and I don't know if it's a state specific thing, and maybe we can't do it around here, but there was something where it was
Double
like
close.
right? So you
Double close.
close twice same day, you close you, and then assign it.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very, gray and not allowed unless you actually buy it and then resell it, like actually close, and you could do that. But essentially what you're doing is you're taking the funds of the end buyer to buy the, to do the double close, and title companies started saying, they didn't like it, right?
Were they trying to do it as a cashless transaction, basically?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And
I think if you have I don't know, friends at a title company or whatever, like, it's definitely something that people do, but it does seem like a bit of a.
Yeah, because essentially what you're doing is you're not being transparent in that process, right? And the title company, you're also avoiding, when you do that, I believe you're avoiding the transfer taxes, right? When if you're doing the simultaneous close, but there's the way the double close it, where people just get like what they call day funding. So you'll get the money specifically just to close it right then and there. And 2 hours later, now you're going to pay 2 sets of transfer taxes, right?
Right.
2 hours later, you're selling it.
That's a real double close.
That's a real double close.
Buy it, and then you can sell the same day, sell the same amount, but you buy it and then you go and you sell it.
Yeah. But what you're talking about was kind of like the simultaneous double close, very frowned upon.
Yeah.
Right.
And I don't even think allowed in some jurisdictions because it avoids transfer taxes. In the municipality, they say you are closing and you are paying, right? Which is why wholesaling is different and where you make more money. I don't close. I don't use my money. I don't have to have any money. All I have are the rights, and I'm selling my rights to someone else, and they go to close one time under my contract, standing in as me.
Let me give you an example of like where a real double close works really well, right? So, have you ever been in a hoarder's home before, like a real hoarder's home, like a real one? Okay, so when you go into a real one, it's crazy, right? Like you can't get into rooms, you can't open doors. I mean, people are like, it's bad, right? And so that person many times is motivated, and you can't even inspect the property because there's so much stuff in the property. You don't even know what's behind the stuff. Okay. So you can go in and you could buy that property, and you buy it cash, and you typically buy it at a pretty low number, right? You're solving the problem. You're getting people out. You're pulling them out of this bad situation. And then you hire and you get like 1, 2, 3 jump. You need the big roll 60-foot, whatever they are, like dumpsters out front. And you're going to need like 20 of those things, right? I mean, a lot. And you're going to spend a lot of money taking that stuff out. But now what you've done is that you've opened up the property, and people can actually see it, and then you just put it right back on the market without really doing anything except just removing the junk and the clutter, and you can create like a massive spread like that, right?
But you have to have the funds to purchase it.
You do.
And clean it out, and then sell it, and then deal with whatever those costs are of selling it. So it's definitely possible, but that's owning real estate.
Yeah, that's
and then selling.
Tonight we're talking about wholesale, but that's how, because what happens is even the investor, like remember the wholesaler is always selling to the rehabber. It's a sales job, right? They're like, hey, this is what I believe it's worth, and this is the condition, and this is the amount of expenses associated with it. And if it looks totally messed up and it's got full of junk, the rehabber is going to pay less, right? So just know that's how you can kind of create more of an arbitrage.
Buyer psychology.
Buyer psychology.
Every buyer wants it to look as good as possible, even as an investor. So how do I get paid? You're usually paid on the HUD, but there are ways to not to. You can fork over cash. You can try to escrow it. You can sell the LLC.
We've done sell the LLC. We've done separate title companies. We're not going to go into all of.
Because you really don't need to, because it's just not typically necessary. The other thing you don't need to do is spend a lot of money. So how much money does it take to wholesale? As little as $0, right? With a basic contract that gives you the right to buy a property that you sell to someone else. None of that costs a lot of money. I've already told you, you could put a house under contract with $10. You don't have to have a lot of money to put down as a deposit. And it doesn't cost you anything to find a motivated seller, to find a buyer who will buy your project from you. And the closing costs are all paid by the people who are actually closing on the property. So
I think he's running back.
you can
11510 in case he wants it.
you can
Oh, you just call. Okay.
you
I think
can
you're okay, Mike.
you can be effective in this business for $0. To do it at scale, if you're looking to wholesale hundreds of properties a year, you're probably going to need to do something to meet all of these motivated sellers.
Well,
right?
the truth is, wholesaling is a marketing game. Like it really is. Like at the end of the day, they're professional marketers, right? That's where you hear, we buy houses as is, any condition. They send out thousands of letters. They're spending tens of thousands of dollars to do it at scale. Do you need that in the beginning? No. Right? You could drive for dollars. You can knock on doors. You don't have to spend any money.
You know, like we know somebody who knew a neighbor that had to sell a house. They wholesaled it to us for $100,000.
Yeah, we taught him how to wholesale, and then he
and
made $100,000 off of it.
Spent
On us.
$0. Not a
Okay.
bad year.
Yeah.
Not a bad year for him. So you can do it for nothing. That's why wholesaling is great. First of all, because it teaches you the marketing aspects of how to talk to motivated sellers, how to find and have these conversations with the people who will sell you property for 70 cents on the dollar minus renovation cost, right? Once you can do that, the rest of it is easy. Finding buyers is easy. Getting them to close is easy. Getting paid is easy. Everything's easy once you can find a deal. That's why wholesaling is the thing that we start with, because it gets you to learn everything else that you need to know, and you can do it for next to
If
nothing.
you know the number, like if, once you know this, you know the numbers.
And there are
That's
plenty of people who we know who,
And you know the game. Now you know what the game is. Right.
So these
only
groups
do
out
that.
there, like Four Brothers Buy Houses.
Yeah.
All, like, I'm on all these different Facebook.
Yeah, they used to come in here all the
off-market
time.
deals, and I get texts all the time, and
Yep.
that's basically wholesalers, right?
that is wholesale.
All
Yep.
right, okay.
And a lot of those folks used to renovate, maybe occasionally still renovate, but predominantly just wholesale, because why wouldn't you? When you renovate the property, you have to buy it. You're on the chain of title. You have the liability of owning this thing. You have to insure this thing. Now you got to renovate it. Hope to God the renovations go the way you thought
Or
they
your
were.
cash comes
Then you
in.
have to sell it.
That
And then
one-
you're still down line in chain of title with the person that you now sold the property to.
One of the things that Zillow realized, right, if you go and you, like, when they went through the exercise of like what happened, was that when you start doing this at scale, the amount of cash that's flowing out for renovations is crazy, right? And a lot of our friends that have renovated at scale, right, like Brad Chandler with Express Home Buyers, they do it at scale, like they find like, wait a second, the hardest part is getting the deal. Like we could just wholesale and turn our cash so much faster because they spend a lot of cash. So imagine this, you spend a lot of cash marketing, and then if you're going to rehab it, you're gonna spend a lot of cash on 30 or 40 properties at a time, renovating them. I mean, the cash that's flowing out, like can bleed you. And if something goes wrong in the market, you're screwed, right? So instead, what you could do is you can turn that cash really fast. You can turn your marketing dollars and turn the return on those marketing dollars very quickly within 30 days.
Within days, right? I've put it under contract. I'm selling my contract to somebody else. As long as they can show up with the cash in a week or two, once the title paperwork is done, they're done. I've got my money. I'm out.
But
as the
everybody
wholesaler.
loves the HDTV thing, right? They love like,
Swinging sledgehammers and getting dirty and knocking down walls. That's fine, but you will never make more money on an hourly basis than putting a thing under contract and just selling those
and
rights
what
to
people
somebody
realize
else.
is like, it was one of the epiphanies that I had because all I did was renovate houses when I first got into this business. And I realized, wait a second, like I can literally control real estate with a listing agreement and make really good money and do it really, really fast and not risk the trailing liability of the renovation. That seems to make a lot more sense to me. It's also what a lot of big rehabbers have also realized that, oh, I could do that, especially in a market now where everybody wants deals. And you thought that it was worth, 500,000 when you bought it, but by the time like you wholesaled it, it was now worth 525, right? Because the market is just crazy. So, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and you take almost none of that market risk on the downside.
Yeah.
When you're wholesaling, because you only control the thing for hopefully a number of weeks, even if it's months and your seller like, I can't sell for another 2 months, fine. If anything changes between now and then, as long as you have a well-written contract that lets you completely walk away or walk away with whatever your small deposit is, you're still not taking the downside risk like you are when you actually buy it. And now, oh, I own this thing. I have to eventually sell it to get my money back out of it. You'll never make more money in real estate per hour than just moving paperwork, right? That's all this is. It's a paperwork exercise, and you can get it done in a few minutes. So
How do we find these deals?
come back on first Tuesday in February.
So So, we actually go over how to make the telephone ring, but I'll answer who asked the question? Did you ask the
did,
question? Okay, so I'll answer it very quickly. It's no different than how you find your agent deals.
Mhm.
Same thing. You're just targeting a different segment. You're going after estate sales, absentee owners,
Okay.
right? There's blighted property list, there's pre-foreclosures, yeah, probate, I mean, there's just divorce, right?
This makes sense. We have an inside sales team at Fulcrum, and they'll call sellers, all kinds of different sellers, and then they'll call me as an agent, as a potential listing agent, and they'll tell me, hey, this is the deal. This seller's got this thing. They're an investor. They're pretty motivated. I told them that we have two hats at Fulcrum. One is we can do a cash offer as an investment side of
Sure.
it, or you can go in and you can talk to them about the benefits of listing it with you. But, back to the thing that you and Lori were talking about a little bit ago, that transparency really pays off. Because I go in and I tell them very, very clearly, hey, we want to make 25%, and we're going to make 25%. Because of that, this is the number that I think I can offer you as a cash offer.
Mhm.
But if you list it with me, we're going to come in, we'll renovate it, we'll do a little, not renovate, we'll do a little facelift.
Yeah.
And then this is the number you can get.
Mhm.
And sometimes they're like, fuck it, I want to go with that first number. 'cause I
Yeah,
want to be
right.
with it.
Yeah, and so it's the same game.
Yeah.
So it's the same game, but what people don't realize is it's just the mechanics of how to wholesale, of how it actually works.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, this is a marketing business, no different than how you market for clients, no different than how I market for clients. You just need to know that you're targeting motivated sellers,
Mhm.
right? That is the psychographic market that you're going after.
This question got tremendously much easier to answer now since COVID. One of the things that COVID did to make life better. Some people are concerned, like, well, what do I do? Like, if the seller shows up at closing and it's a totally different person than the person they did their handshake deal with. So who's bought property in the last 18 months? Did you go to a room with a bunch of people and sign a bunch of papers? Hell no. No one goes to rooms
But
anymore.
back in the old days, it was like the buyer and the seller, we're all there, and we're
People
all
will like
shaking
hug and
hands.
like trade keys and all of this stuff. So even back in those days, 10 years ago,
Yeah.
20 years ago, you would just tell your seller, not sure if I'm actually even going to be able to go to the
I'm
settlement.
not going, you're gonna be
I
my
usually
partner.
just wire this stuff in, but I might have to have someone else come and sign some of the stuff for me if I can't make it. I might not be in town. Just don't, again, the money's going to be there. The title company is an independent party that I have no control over. Feel free to call them. They'll tell you when the money is there. They're going to set it all up. They'll make sure you get paid. But this might be the last time that I get to see you. So let's all high five because we're happy, right? But now I haven't been to a closing in years. So in the last 2 years, they don't want you there anyway. So no one goes to rooms anymore and sees one another. So a seller expecting to see someone's face is really no longer an issue, but you just don't make it an issue. Just say, hey, by the way, all closings now just are digital things. Like we don't do, that's the old-fashioned way. No one goes to a room anymore. But if you have any questions, here's the title company. You're going to know that I'm legit because in the next 3 or 4 days, you're going to start getting phone calls from people saying, hey, we need to collect some information for you. We need to know where to send your check. We need to know, the proper name that you signed all of your loan documents and all your deeds under, and they're going to start collecting information. Those people will take care of everything and they'll get you your money. I'll see you down in Florida when you take our money and retire, right? We high five, we have a good laugh about it. And then that's it. But settlement is not a thing that people do face to face anymore. Because that's a drag.
Yes.
Full title on the property? Short answer?
Yes.
Yes, right? To your point earlier, if you're gonna be a wholesaler, you need to know what you're selling, right? So you need to know, just because a seller tells you, yeah, I can sell you this house for $500,000. Can they? Do they have 15 other liens and judgments on the property? You'll need to know. And by the way, that's one of the conversations that you'll have. Keep coming to these things. We'll talk about some of the conversations you have with the seller. But one of them is, hey, title company, those people I told you about who get paid to kind of manage all this stuff, they're going to check title and they're going to find out what all is owed on the property and if there's any liens or anything like that. So please let me know if there's anything we need to know now, because they're going to find out about it. We have to know before we can buy your property. And then do it. Get a title company if you need one. We'd be happy to introduce you to ours. We love them. They will pull title for you for a reasonable fee, and then you'll know what it is that you have. And by the way, you'll be able to give that information to your seller. Hey, Rob, you want to buy my deal? Cool. You're going to close with these people. They've already started the title paperwork so that you can actually show up next Friday like you said you're gonna, when you have your cash, right? It's ready to go. title already been started. We're just
Guys,
gonna
when you
insert your
get
name.
into this, like, you end up becoming like a relationship contract ninja with people, right? Like, I remember being in DC late at night with our buddy Richie. It's an estate sale, and there's like 6 heirs, and they're all around the table, right? And we're negotiating essentially with 6 different personalities. They all have 6 different agendas. They all want 6 different things. And it's like getting everybody to come to consensus, and you're reading body language. We're going to talk about this. You're reading body language. Like, one of them's like this, like totally suspect. One of them's completely engaged. And it's like, you're trying to piece all this together and get everybody to buy in. It's fun. So much fun. I have so much fun.
Yeah.
So, Mark, is the fee that title companies charge to a wholesaler different? Because
No,
our settlement company charges, at least the one that we're affiliated with, around $600. Is it something like that? Is it
yeah, it's the same. Nothing's different.
Yeah, no, it's all the same. They're just as happy to do these deals as we are, because hopefully they know they've got professionals on both sides. From a buyer's perspective, we're making sure that the buyer's going to show up, because I want to get my money as the wholesaler. So I've vetted and found a good buyer who's hopefully bringing cash.
I love it when you
our
see
money.
like people say, I'm looking for an investor-friendly title company. What the hell does that mean?
They all want your money.
Yeah. But you see that all the time, like the chats. It's like, it's almost like they're trying to ask somebody that's hoping to do something illegal, right? Like investor. I'm like, I don't even know where that came about, right? But it's just any title company can help, right?
I have a question.
Mhm.
All right, so title insurance.
Mhm.
As a wholesaler, are you at any risk if you're an
You've never bought it.
buyer, you never buy it? Obviously, as a wholesaler, you're not doing a double closing. I mean, you're just getting a fee. But there's no risk to you as a wholesaler if the buyer chooses not to buy title insurance, right?
No
Nope.
risk to you.
No.
Mm-mm.
You're not a party to the contract anymore. You're not a party to anything. You have assigned all of your rights, all of your obligations to another person. Whatever they get into as part of buying this property is up to them.
Yeah.
So
Good question now.
it is a very good question.
Okay, give us questions. Any questions?
And there are actually a couple, I think,
Okay.
in the chat box I can look up.
So can a wholesaler advertise saying that I have the rights, but actually don't have the rights, and act like a wholesaler until he basically fishes for the right buyer?
You
Sure.
see people do that all the
Yeah.
time. It's shady as hell, but people do it all the time, right? Like, we know of a good investor. He's successful wholesaler. That what he would do is it was kind of brilliant, actually. What he would do is he would be talking to sellers, and he'd be fishing. This is how he determined like actual wholesale values. He'd be talking to the seller, and he'd get a general idea of what seller is willing to sell it for. And then he would take that property to the open market, saying that he had it under contract, and essentially say, hey, I'm willing to sell you this. You can't talk to the seller, because obviously you don't want to do that, right? But I'm willing to sell this property to you for this amount, right? And he's trying to figure out what the market is dictating with the wholesale fee, and he hasn't even controlled it yet, right? I know, holy shit, he's making you think like he's controlled it,
Right.
right?
So as a buyer, should we ask, send us your contract or the rights, whatever the contract is?
And they'd probably be like,
That it's
no,
actual-
pound cent, no, you could ask the question, do you actually control it, right? What happens is, here's what you learn, is that ultimately this world of real estate investing, like, it's small. Everybody gets to learn about who the players are. And then if somebody is a bad apple, they get weeded out. And you see how people are getting called out now on social media. Have you guys seen, like, don't do a deal with this particular person? They like, we just had a situation where 2 of our grid members separately, right, got screwed by some wholesaler or contractor out, like some deal, right? And that guy's done. Like, he'll never be able to perform like he was performing before.
He'll never
Right?
work in this town.
He won't work in this town anymore. It just won't. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, there are definitely plenty of people who do things unethically, but it's really easy to do ethically. Everything starts with identifying a motivated seller. If you have a motivated seller of a property, you don't need to do anything unethical. You just need to say, I can help you. I will gladly help you.
Yeah,
I will
you're in the-
take this thing off your hands and get it out of your life. Here's how much I'll do it for. We
But
can
it-
do it by the end of the month. Does that sound good? Yes, fine, sign here. And then you sell those rights to somebody else.
Any other
Somebody asked about, can you wholesale note, meaning the promise to pay, right? The note that people sign when they take out a mortgage.
We need Sri here to answer
Uh,
that question. I
I
don't know
think
the answer.
the short answer, I'm pretty sure, is yes, because it's a legal document, and any legal document has rights, and those rights are typically transferable and sellable to other people. Notes are real estate, houses are real
Yeah,
estate,
but you know,
offices are
a
real estate.
mortgage note, they will not let me, the VA loans back in the old days were assignable, like literally, but you then have to qualify, and for some of them still are, but you still have to qualify. But I can't like assign my note to you, the bank,
Correct. If you have a traditional, whatever bank of whoever mortgage, you can't just say, hey, person, you take over my mortgage. That's right. That's the assignment of a mortgage. That's not a note. A note is when you control the loan that is to be repaid. Can I sell that loan if I hold the loan? Of course.
yeah,
We've done that,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
When
For
you
sure.
make the loan, when you do a for sale by owner, for instance,
Yep.
if you actually own the property outright, you can take that note that someone owes you and you can sell it to somebody else.
And later in the year, we talk about subject twos. So that is a little bit of what I was just alluding to, where you actually can take over the payments and the deed, right? Subject to, what's there, the mortgage that's there. There's mechanics around it. We typically bring in Peggy. She goes by Naya now, who's an expert in subject twos. And she walks through all the mechanics. I did one last year with a member of this group because he was an expert in subject two. And he's like, why don't you just take over why don't you just,
But that's a topic for another night.
that's a topic for another night.
Mike,
Okay.
do you know of anything else that came up in the chat question-wise that we should be answering?
I was looking through it, no, I don't,
Okay.
the note thing, and then just if they have changed
The contract?
Cool. Well, guys, we definitely, I just looked, it's 8 already.
Uh-huh.
That's crazy. Okay. Time flies when we're talking. I just want to say everybody, thank you for joining us online. Too bad you weren't here in person. You don't get access to the contracts and documents, but next time we want to see you here because we definitely want to bring people back in the room. We understand COVID's still out there. We want to be safe. Want to keep everybody safe. So, but this worked great. We got some people in the room. We got some people online. That helps us with energy. And now you guys get to meet each other and network, which is really what this is all about, right? So thank you for joining us online, everybody. We appreciate you. And thank you for joining us here in person.